Yeshua,
Yes, praise God.
for another beautiful day that He's made. And we give Him glory and honor for it. And for those that can be with us today on our group call here today. We're just thankful for all His blessings today. We're going to take our lesson today from Colossians, and I'll probably have a couple of days on this, a couple of weekends, or a couple of Sabbaths, at least, maybe more than that. But, well, this is where Yeshua is leading me, so this is why I'm here. So I just feel the importance of it, and the reason for I feel for the importance of it is as you read in this book and in a lot of his letters and Peter's, John's, James's, all of them's letters that they write, you can see that they're struggling with outside forces trying to come in. And the assemblies that has been set up at different towns and different places, but you can see and you read about it, and you see that there's a difference. Outside forces trying to come in and lead the assemblies astray, and really, I think Paul and the other apostles, they spent, really, if you read the scriptures, you find that they're really spending more time trying to encourage and trying to show the difference between the truth in the gospel and what others are trying to bring in. And they're always encouraging the assemblies to stand in the truth that they have received. And I kind of noticed in this book here, when I was reading it, I've noticed it all along, or I've seen it, but I really didn't know. I learned a couple of words. I really didn't, I knew the meaning or the definition, but I couldn't have put a word to that would describe the definition, I guess. But I do notice the definitions of the words, and I'll bring them out here in a few minutes. But this is something that not only were they battling and were they always having to come against, but it's as prevalent in the world today as it was then. But anyway, I'm going to get into the reading here, and then I'm going to, and then we'll see how Yeshua leads us in it. But we won't get into much of the actual today about the actual what they're actually battling in, but we're going to give he's encouraging them really and praising them, in this first chapter, and that's where I'm beginning. The end is the first chapter of Colossians. And he is explaining, about, our service to Messiah. So, but anyway, I'm going to start reading here, and then we'll see where Yeshua has us to go with it. But in the first few verses, of course, is Paul's salutation, if you will, to the church or to the assembly. And but we'll read it anyway to get us going on it. But let's just read it. And it says, Paul, an apostle of Yeshua Messiah, by the will of God, and Timothy, a brother. And Paul asserts here, and he does in most of his writings, that he's just not out there teaching because he's wants to be known by somebody or others or whatever, but he's doing it by the will of God, and God has called him into it, and he is doing it by the will of God. And so he's all seemed like in several of his books that he brings this point out, that he's not doing it on his own, but that God has called him to do it. And just like today, I'm called of God to do what I'm doing, or else I wouldn't do it. I guarantee you, I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't called of God to do it. I'm not that well a speaker. I don't enjoy, from a personal standpoint, I don't enjoy getting up before people and trying to speak to them. I'm too backward in myself to do that, but according to the will of God, I know that I have to do it. Now, and just to say, my calling to go out and teach and to preach the gospel of Yeshua is not on as large a scale, let's say, as Paul's was, or as large a scale as any of the other apostles or prophets. They usually went to the prophets especially, and Peter and John, they went to the house of Israel. They were teaching to the house of Israel. Paul was sent to the Gentiles. And and me, I'm just sent to those who he has for me to do today. And the world being as big as it is, and the population being as much as it is, and so forth, mine's not on as large a scale as theirs was, but that doesn't make it any less important because it's not as on a larger scale. I must do what Yeshua calls me to do, as other ministers today that Yeshua has called. They must do what Yeshua has called them to do. And even though, like I said, it's not on as large a scale, but it is important, because it's important that we teach the word so that those that are hearing or that Yeshua sends to hear will hear it, so that Yeshua will enlighten those that are his and bring them into the sheepfold, because he chose the foolishness of preaching, as the scripture in the King James refers to. He chose the foolishness of preaching to save them that are lost. So it's just as important, because people has to hear the word, and then Yeshua reveals the word, and then they accept the word. So I may not reach near as many people as they do, but I reach those that Yeshua wants me to reach. And I have that, assurance in myself that, as long as I'm doing the will of the Messiah, then I will reach those that he has for me to reach, that are his. Anyway, but like I said, Paul makes it clear that it's by the will of God that he's doing this. And he's introducing, of course, Timothy. He considers his brother Even in times he refers to him maybe as like a son that he begot through the word. But anyway, by the will of God, and Timothy, our brother. To the saints and faithful brethren in Messiah which are at Colossia, grace be unto you and peace from our Father and the Master Yeshua Messiah. Also, I want to institute here the best I can understand and read here. Paul hasn't even met these people that he's writing to here. He didn't actually set this assembly up. Epaphras, or whatever how you want to say his name, is evidently probably the one that actually set it up and reported it to Paul, and probably he's the one that reported the things that was happening in it, and Paul was writing to this. No doubt they had heard of him, but he just hadn't been there. And Paul was writing to this assembly to encourage them and to point out the things that was others are coming into, that to encouraging them not to listen to those things that they were bringing in, but to stick to the truth. And he was still giving his salutation here to the church. But anyway, he says, we give thanks to God and the Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, praying always for you. Since we heard of your faith in Messiah Yeshua and of the love to all the saints. So, that tells me that he's probably never met these people face to face, but he has heard, most likely, as he says down in the 7th verse from Epaphras, that, and he's writing to them. For the hope, let me read that out again. Since we heard of your faith in Messiah Yeshua and of the love to all the saints, for the hope which is laid up for you in heaven, whereof ye heard before in the word of the truth of the gospel. And I want you to underline or stick it in your mind somewhere, whatever, where he's telling them here. Whereof you heard before in the word of the truth of the gospel. And he even reiterates that in this next verse. So, which is coming to you as it is in all the world, and bringeth forth fruit as also in you, since the day you heard of it and knew the grace of God in truth. Now, we'll learn here in a little while what is the truth of the gospel, and even the mystery of the truth of the gospel. But anyway, he's encouraging them to listen and for the truth of the gospel. As in, when he wrote to the assembly there at Galatia, he encouraged them, and told them, said, if anybody else comes to you in any other, with any other gospel than that you have already heard, even if I come to you with a gospel a different gospel, don't receive it. You've already got the truth of the gospel. Don't receive anything else that is coming. And that's more or less what he's kind of saying here is, about the truth of the gospel. And he's encouraging them to stay in the truth. As you also learn of Epaphras, our dear fellow servant, who is for you a faithful minister of the Messiah. And that's the reason I said a while ago that probably Epaphras may have been the one who set this assembly up. But anyway, whether he is or not, he's a minister in it or to it. So, and he has written it and he has consoled with Paul here, and then Paul's writing this letter to them. For you, a faithful minister of Messiah, who also declared unto us your love in the Spirit. So he's reporting to Paul about this assembly. For this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you and to desire that you might be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. Now, I want to talk a little bit about knowledge, but now the knowledge of Yeshua's will and all wisdom and spiritual understanding is going to be, won't be the knowledge that actually I'll be referring to here in a minute. But we do need the knowledge of the Messiah and of his will and of the truth of the gospel. We need that knowledge, and we need that wisdom and spiritual understanding. Without it, you cannot know the Messiah, or the Messiah know you, of his will. That you might walk worthy of the Master unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God. Once again, and I have a very good experience and example of what he's referring to here is, well, most of you know that, all of you that's here knows that at one time I was in the Christian faith. I was of a particular denomination, which is the Pentecost, and I taught it and I preached in it for many years. Over 40 years was I there and was I in it. But when Yeshua began to open mine and my wife's understanding to the truth of the gospel, the only thing that he had opened our understanding to basically there was that we was not to do the things that other people or that the world was doing and say we was doing it unto the Messiah, which at that time was a lot of the holidays that we were observing, that man has decided was a way of giving Yahweh and Yeshua praise was through developing these holy days and observing those holy days, which was one thing. But then he began to what really made the difference was when he began to reveal, as I've been talking about here lately, about what God said and what God gave man to say and do, how that God's word that he's saying is an eternal word, which is his laws and his commandments. They're referred to as commandments in the scripture, and they're also referred to as laws. And understanding those commandments and seeing that we was not obeying or trying to obey all of those commandments, and specifically the fourth one, of remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. We weren't doing that. We were using man's version of the Sabbath. And when we saw that, and Yeshua opened our mind to that, then we came out, because others that we was trying to talk to and teach, and the church that I was in at that time would not accept it. And so we had to come out, and we had to start our own. And we came out on that, basically that one thing. We didn't have knowledge of other things. We came out on that one thing, and we stood on it. And we was willing to separate ourselves from the others because of the revelation that Yeshua has given us is about that particular commandment of his, of remembering the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And we did. We came out and we began to observe that day instead of the man-made holy day or Sabbath day, which is the first day of the week, instead of the Sabbath day of the week, seventh day. And we come out on that, and we stood on that. And as Yahweh or Yeshua seen that we were willing to stand on that, then he began to reveal more mysteries of his gospel to she and I. And that's how we got to where we are at today. And how that he eventually turned the way I taught and what I preached around to teaching the truth of the gospel and the mystery of the gospel. And it differs from everything else out here in the world today. I don't care what denomination you are in, or if you're in what they refer to as Hebrew roots and Messianic, it's different from them. And you have to stand for that and to teach that. And that's what Paul was encouraging these people to do, was to stand and praying for them that they would receive the knowledge of the gospel, and that they would receive the wisdom and the understanding that they might walk worthy of the Master. See, you cannot walk worthy of the Master, of Yeshua, using the imaginations and the philosophies and the deceit and the rudiments of the world and of the quote-unquote Christian world. You cannot walk worthy and pleasing to the Messiah by agreeing with that and practicing or observing that. You cannot do it, and this chapter tells you that you cannot do it, and as a matter of fact, it warns you not to do it. And anyway, that's coming out from among the rest of the beliefs, and that's his preeminent that's the way he's going to bring in about all of these other things that are coming out. That are coming in trying to pervert the truth of the gospel of the Messiah. And it's not only then, but it's today. But anyway, let me go on here. That you might walk worthy of the Master unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. That's where that's the knowledge that he's talking about, is what I was talking about, is learning the truth of the gospel. Strengthened with all might, according to his glorious power, unto all patience and long suffering with joyfulness, giving thanks unto the Father, which has made us meet or fit to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light. In other words, those that have this knowledge. Who hath delivered us from the power of darkness and has translated or transferred into the kingdom of his dear Son. When we come into the knowledge of the truth and the wisdom of that truth, and we obey it, then are we transferred or translated into the kingdom of his dear Son. In whom, now he's talking about the kingdom of his dear Son now, the Yeshua the Messiah, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sin, who is the image of the invisible God, or he's the image of Yahweh, the firstborn of every creature. In other words, he's first, and that he has the preeminence, as we'll learn here shortly, of every creature. For by him, now listen, for by Yeshua, that's who he's referring to, who he's talking about, for by him were all things created. Well, I didn't think Yeshua was in until he was born in Bethlehem there as a babe. No, Yeshua has been, to be in the mind of the Messiah, of Yahweh the Father, to be in his mind, to be in the mind of Yahweh the Father is the same thing, because he's an all-knowing, all-purpose God, that nothing changes in him. To be in the mind of him is to consider it already done. You understand what I'm saying? It is to consider it already done, because it's already purposed in the mind of the Messiah. And if you can grasp that, and if you can understand that, then you can understand that, this thing, this body of the Messiah, this assembly, this church, is, as the world wants to refer to it, the church, or the body of the Messiah, was made up in the mind of Yahweh from the beginning, or before the creation of the earth. This thing was already made up in his mind. So it was already, you could consider it already done. Those that are his are going to be his. John, the 10th chapter, kind of goes through that. John the 10th and others right in there, kind of goes through that all that the Father has given me, Yeshua himself says, I will lose none. I'm not going to lose a one of them. Why? Because it's already purposed in the mind of Yahweh. It's already done. And I know that goes to predestination, and a lot of people don't like predestination, but I don't care whether they like it or not. When you understand God a little bit, and you see that there's no change in him, and he purposed everything from the beginning, before the creation. The scripture says that we were in the mind of the Messiah, of God, before the foundation of the world. We were already purposed. And you think, man, that was over 4,000 years before. It was right at 6,000 years before I was ever born. But it don't make any difference. I'm still, my mind, I was already purposed in the mind of Yahweh, to be his, and to be a minister, teacher, whatever, of his. Now, I can say to a lot of people now, and not referring in any way that anybody ought to take up tobacco, but it'll put that in your pipe and smoke it. That's the way it is. Now, he never changes. Now, a lot of people look at that different, in that, well, he gave the law to the children of Israel, Mosaic law, and God never changes, so we still have to do. That's not what he said. He had that in mind in order to bring the children of Israel up to the birth of the Messiah, until the coming of the Messiah. He had that in mind. When the coming of the Messiah comes, then that was in his mind to be be after that, if you will. That's the best way I can put it. Preceded before, I think. Anyway, I'm going to show you how dumb I was anyway here in a minute. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. Now, I'm watching this world today, and just how evil it's becoming, and the powers that be in the world today, the kings, the rulers, the presidents, whatever you want to call the leaders of this world, and of the different kingdoms or countries, or however how you want to do that, and you're watching, and you have to, what in the world is going on? But I can guarantee you what's going on is what God has already purposed. Even the president that we've got, whom I don't have much confidence in at all, I have to acknowledge that even he has been purposed in that mind of God to do what he's doing. Even though I don't like it, I still have to admit that, that's part of it. What's going on in France this week? What's going on? Whether it's good, whether it's evil, the scriptures teach us that God created both, good and evil. Or sometimes it puts a little softer words on it, whether it's to honor or to dishonor. So, which is our little softer words, but it doesn't make any difference. Yahweh and his son Yeshua, the visible part of the invisible God, has created all of these. And man has always thought that he could change what God has done. He's always, we just got to, I hear I use the word religious movement. Well, we've got to change this country. If we don't change this country, it's going to hell. It's going to be destroyed, and if that's the purpose of God, when he created this country, if that's the purpose of God that it be destroyed at some point in time, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be destroyed. I don't care what you do to change it. You're not going to change that. Now, you can change the way it affects you, and I'm using that word lightly, in that you don't get all worked up and all worried about what's going on out there, but realize that all things are working to your good, and those that are called according to the purpose of Yeshua, all things are working to our good. Whether it's the evil or the good, it's still working to our good, that we will be made meet to be part of the inheritance of God. You know, man in his determination to change things has went against what God has said to start with. You know, when Yeshua gave a good example when he was asked about, you know, are we to pay taxes? Are we not to pay taxes? Are we to abide to this world? Are we not to? Or are we to rebel against it? And you know, and which man is still doing? You know, I've seen some perfectly good examples. Right, that was in the event of my life. You know, not to me, but what I've seen. But he gave the perfect example when he said, you know, when he asked for the coin, and they handed him a coin, and he asked, said, whose inscription is on this coin? Caesar's inscription. At that time, he was the ruler, he was the president, he was the whatever, he was the head. And Yeshua said, you render unto Caesar that is Caesar's, and you render unto God that is God's. In other words, you're living in this world. You've got to abide a lot of times by the things that's in this world and the laws that's of this world, so long as they're not against God's laws, and you abide. And that's just it. You abide. It's not your world. You abide in it until Yeshua comes and takes you out of it. And we are to live in it, and we are to abide by its laws, so long as they're not contrary to the laws of God. And most of them aren't. And we are to abide in it. And, you know, Yeshua and Yahweh has made all things, whether they be thrones, kingships, dominions, principalities or powers, all things were created by him. And if you will notice here, it says, and for him. And he is before all things. And by him all things consist. Whether they be thrones, dominions, principalities, powers, all things were created by him and for him, and all things consist by him. But he's given a warning here to, well, actually he will in the next chapter. But I want to address here in just a minute the definition of the words, or the words of the definitions that I've seen, and I will address them here in just a minute. And it says, and he is the head. Yeshua is the head, the body, the church or the assembly, who is the beginning. Yeshua is the beginning. The firstborn from the dead. He's the first one that rose from the dead. Now, he's not the only one that has rose from the dead. And I'm not talking about Zechariah. Y'all know what I'm talking about, the one he raised from the dead. Lazarus. Thank you. I'm not talking about him. Yes, he rose. He was, and Peter even did it, you know. But no, I'm talking about the first fruits that he brought forth after his resurrection. The scriptures don't say much about them, and I think it's because people even then didn't really understand and didn't know what to do about it, and But he saw to it that it was put in there. When he died, first of all, the gravestones, the stones on the graves was rolled away at that time. And now, the third day after his resurrection, the scriptures teaches us that those saints, now, not everybody that was in the grave, but the saints came forth. And we know it's true because those that were in the towns and in the cities saw them walking and saw them. So we know that he did it. And I, for one, as you know, the children of Israel were to present first fruits offerings of the agricultural grain that was that was harvested there during the time of Passover. They were to take a portion of that first fruits or the grains or the agricultural, whether it would be grain, but they used, actually it was barley I think they used, but anyway, they were to take a portion of that and offer it as an offering unto God before they was to ever partake of the harvest. It was to be their first fruits. And if you understand God and knowing that Passover that God, Yahweh instituted, of course, was a type and shadow of the Messiah's coming and his sacrifice. And not only that, but he presented a first fruits offering unto God. And those would have been the saints of the souls that rose. Why would he raise them out of the grave and let them walk among the people and then say, sorry, you've got to go back until the resurrection, until I come and gather everybody? Sorry, you got to go back. Oh, wait a minute. You done raised me. I got to go back? Stop and think about things. And let Yeshua work with you. And develop in your mind and understand. That's part of understanding and studying and understanding those feast days that Yeshua or Yahweh instituted. Of understanding them and of all of their works that they did under them. It kind of gives you the understanding of what went on and what would go on and what did go on. And just as the priests of those that were administrators of the Old Covenant, just as the priests had to offer did offer a first fruits offering unto God, Yeshua, our high priest, offered a first fruits offering unto God there in the throne room of heaven. I know I'm getting off of what I'm getting at today a little bit, but that's what Yeshua wanted me to bring forth, so that's what I brought forth. But anyway, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist, and he is the head of the body, the church, or the assembly, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all he might have the preeminence. He may be first, he may have it all. For it pleased, and King James Version here has inserted the Father, the word the Father, that in him should all fullness dwell. But if you know the scriptures, you know he wasn't seeking to please anybody else but the Father, so it didn't really have to be put in there for you to understand if you understand in the scriptures. Of course, that's who he was trying to please. That's who he did please. His whole time upon the earth, his whole purpose was to obey and please the Father. And he did that. For it pleased that in him should all fullness dwell. And we all know that it represents the Father. And having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him to reconcile all things unto himself. By him, I say, whether of things in earth or things in heaven. And you that were sometimes alienated and enemies in mind by wicked works, yet now hath he reconciled. Now this assembly in Colossia was predominantly at least was a Gentile assembly, and he has brought them, and because at one time they were alienated and enemies in mind by wicked works, you now hath he reconciled. Now has he brought in the body of his flesh through death, to present you holy and unblameable and unreprovable in his sight. If you continue in the faith, grounded and settled, and not moved away from the hope of the gospel. What is the truth of the gospel? The truth. If you are continued in the faith, grounded and settled, and not moved away from the hope of the gospel. You know, I told you to underline or put it in your word or in your mind about the truth of the gospel. Not just anything that's taught, not just anything that has been brought in among you, but the truth of the gospel, or the hope of the gospel, which you have heard, which was preached to every creature which is under heaven, whereof I, Paul, am made a minister. You know, a lot of people said, well, Yeshua can't come because all things, everybody is not, this gospel has not been preached to every nation. But I beg your pardon. It was preached to every nation under the sun at that time on the day of Pentecost. And the scriptures tells us it was. And Paul here says it was, which was preached to every creature which is under heaven, whereof I, Paul, am made a minister. It's been preached. So that is not an obstacle that has to be removed before Messiah comes. That has already been done. Now, a lot of them, a lot of nations and a lot of creatures, if you want to refer to it, but a lot of nations rejected God and rejected his gospel, and were, as Israel, when they rejected obeying God, was cast out of their land. The people that rejected God are out here, and now some of their descendants may not have ever heard it, but that nation heard it. That group, that people heard it in the beginning. It says, wherefore I am made a minister. No. Who now rejoice in my sufferings for you, and fill up that which is behind of the afflictions of Messiah in my flesh, for his body's sake, which is the church or the assembly. Wherefore I am made a minister according to the dispensation, the stewardship or the dispensation of God, which is given to me for you to fulfill the word of God, the truth of God, the mystery which hath been hid from ages. You know, the mystery which was been hid from ages. You know, the children of Israel under their old covenant did not know the mystery of God, did not understand it. It was not given them. They knew that there was to be a Messiah come, but they didn't know the full mystery of it. They didn't have the full understanding of it. Now, those who put their faith in the fact that Yeshua or Yahweh had promised a Messiah, and they put their faith in that, they were, that was counted unto them for their righteousness, because they put their faith in it and not in other things. But and no doubt those are some of those that was probably raised from the dead after Yeshua's resurrection. those that had faith in the Messiah, that in God, that the Messiah would come. The mystery which has been hid from ages and from generations, but now is made manifest to his saints. It's now, and only then was it made manifest. And up from then up till now was it made manifest. It was not made manifest or known. Be made known is what to manifest is to be made known to those under the old covenant, and even beyond the old covenant, before the old covenant was ever instituted. Those it was they knew that there was to be a Messiah, but they didn't know the full mystery of it, because it was hid from them. To whom God would make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles. See, during the time of the old covenant, now individual Gentiles could come into it if they agreed to the laws and were circumcised. They could be brought into the assembly or Israel. They could be, and they could partake of the they could partake of the feast and all that pertained to them, if they would denounce their old religion, I guess if you would say it, and agree to the old covenant, and to abide by the covenant that God had made with Israel, and to be circumcised. Then they would be able to have it. But this is to whom God would make. So, but the nations of the Gentiles was not brought in. Just those individuals to whom would be willing to do that. But now all Gentiles or all peoples, let me just put it that way, all peoples, not just Israel, but all peoples is God now revealing the mystery among them, which is, what is the mystery? The mystery is the Messiah in you, the hope of glory. Even though it was prophesied to them, and 2 or 3, I know, books in the Old Testament, it was prophesied to them that the Messiah, or the Spirit, would be placed in them. And Ezekiel, about the 30th chapter, somewhere right in there, 30, 31, 32, 33, whatever, somewhere in there, is one of the best definitions, or the plainest spoken about that. Where he's where he makes a promise, as he did in Jeremiah, in the last days, that he would I'd have to go back there and read it exactly what it said, but how that he would in the last days he would make a new covenant, with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, and not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers. He would make that. Well, Ezekiel makes a same statement here, but he says, I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of the countries, and will bring you into your own land. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, and you shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit. A new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you, and cause you to walk in my statutes. And ye shall keep my judgments and do. See, it was prophesied to them, but they didn't understand it. But this is what that mystery was. And Paul brings it out in here. Mystery among the Gentiles, which is that Spirit or Messiah in you, the hope of glory. Not only to Israel, but to the Gentiles was this. And it was revealed unto them that now Yeshua will be in you, and by being in you, that Spirit or Messiah will cause you to keep His commandments that God spoke Himself there at Mount Sinai. He will cause them to be kept in you. Not what I do, but what He does, and what He does for us. Whom we preach, warning every man and teaching every man in all wisdom, that we may present every man perfect in Messiah Yeshua. Wherefore I also labor, striving according to His working, which worketh in me mightily. For I'm going to read the first 3 verses of the 2nd chapter, and then I'm going to talk for a minute. For I would that you knew what great conflict I have for you and them in Laodicea, and as many as have been not seen my face in the flesh. Now, see, that tells me, like I said in the beginning, that Paul had never been to Colossia at this time, and these people had not seen him. They just knew of him. And also Laodicea, the other town, was close by. Because the letter that was written to Laodicea, or this letter was to be read not only to the assembly at Colossia, but it was also to be read to the assembly there in Laodicea. That their hearts might be comforted, being knit together in love, and unto all riches of the full assurance and of understanding, to the acknowledgement of the mystery of God, and of the Father, and of Messiah, in whom are hid all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. And I'm gonna stop reading right there, but and I'm going back. There we're in the 27th verse where he talks about revealing the mystery here is among the Gentiles, which is Messiah in you, the hope of glory. And that is what we are to put our faith in. That's what we are to look at. And, if, I don't know, man has got it somehow or another in his mind that if, even though, because people's like, well, I got the Spirit in me, this Yeshua is in me, but you see them doing everything in the world. You talk, you acting just like the world out here. If the Messiah is in you, you will not do that. You will. How's the Messiah going to be in you and you doing everything else? Well, He's in me, but He's in them, but He's not. They're not obeying Him. Honey, if they ain't going to obey Him, the children of Israel didn't obey Him. He cast them out. What do you think He's going to do about you? Or about them that's not obeying that Spirit that is supposed to be in them. What's He going to do about that? He's going to do actually the same thing. He's going to cast them out. They're not part of Him anyway. If you're part of Him and that Spirit is put in you, then you are of His body and you will obey Him.
That's right.
You will obey Him. I'm not telling you that you're going to be perfect, that you're not going to yield to some things of this flesh, but you will obey Him. And Paul is here trying to head off, if you will. And this first chapter doesn't get too much into it, but he's trying to head off because no doubt Ephraim has reported to him, and has probably reported to him about all of these, as we will see as we go advance into the book, into the letter, that is coming among them and trying to teach them other things. And they're teaching them these other things. You know, we've got it a lot today. You know, I see people who think that knowledge of the Word, or not necessarily of the Word, but knowledge, because if they had knowledge of the Word, they would see who Messiah was, and that's who their faith would be. But they're putting in their faith and their Word, or their knowledge, that they're drawing from the Word, and thinking that this knowledge is going to somehow or another be the key to the lives of mystery other than the faith in the Messiah. And they think by this knowledge that they're getting, and that such knowledge came from spiritual insight. In other words, Yeshua, God has given them this insight, and a lot of the teachings that if you notice and you hear a lot of the teachings today, they're teaching about a lot of things and comparing this to that, and you know, there's some that's into. I forget the word they use, assimilation or something like that. How that if you read this particular verses in Scripture in this book or this that it will, and then you read this other verses here, even though they don't say exactly the same things, they're still meaning the same thing. And they're trying to teach this. They've got the knowledge of this to be able to search this verse out, be able to search this bunch of verses out, and say, now this verses and these verses are saying the same thing, or doing the same. They're getting this knowledge, and they're trying to teach that instead of teaching Messiah, the hope of glory in them, and faith in Him. They're thinking all this other stuff is some spiritually inspired thing that God has done. And that they're getting this from spiritual insight. God is doing. And by the way, the word for that, and I see it today too, a lot of people are thinking that they, as I was giving an example there of those that are teaching, you know, I wish I could remember the word. Robinson teaches it. You know, we got it, some teachings of his. Mm-hmm. And I forget the word he uses that this is an assimilation, or this and this are representing the same thing. Well, like they teach, well, you know, the word three. Anytime you see the word three, it's representing the same thing anywhere in the Bible. Anytime you see it, even though you're not catching it, that it's representing the same thing. It's representing the same thing. And it don't have to best be the word, the letter three, or the number three, the number three, but it can be, as long as it's associated with the number three. 330, which got a 3 in it. 33 has got a 3 in it. 53 has got a 3 in it. You know, whatever. You know, as long as that 3, the number 3 is in it, then it's an association with the same thing. And this knowledge, and of course I've heard of the word all my life, I guess. But, you know, I see this kind of teaching, and I see this kind of things that people think that God is really revealing a great spiritual insight about things like this when it really doesn't even have anything to do with their plan of salvation. But they're claiming that it is, and this is somehow another spiritual insight and so forth. But anyway, it's, the word is, when you practice it, is agnosticism or agnostic. And I know some of you others out there that smarter than me, I recognize the definition a lot better than I would have been able to associate the word with it. Agnosticism. And and another word that I see the definition of out here is, I don't know if I'm saying the word right, is asceticism. Asceticism, or ascetic, is an extreme, or is a lifestyle or life habits of extreme denial, self-denial of things. Thinking that is going to put you in, that by abstaining from these things, that's going to make you more conformable to God's will. And you see that everywhere today too. I mentioned earlier that a lot of people today think that the old covenant the new covenant is just a extension of the old covenant, and that's in no way true. The old covenant the new covenant replaced the old covenant. In other words, the old covenant passed away. But they don't expect that, and so they go back to the old covenant and they look at it and they looked at its laws, and I'm talking about the Mosaic law and how it was represented and how it was used under it. And they think, well, if I do that, then I somehow or another will conform more to the will of God. If I abstain from a lot of the things that it's talking about, it will cause me to be more conformity with the will of God's will. And all of that is as false as it can be, because what makes you more conformity in God's will is to put your faith in Messiah Yeshua and present your body to Him for Him to work His will in you. My self-denial of whatever, now I know I don't partake of the unclean foods. At least I try the best I can not to partake of the unclean foods that Yahweh mentioned as unclean. But I realize that is not, and does not make me any more conformity to God's will. It's just that because God said it Himself, I don't do it. But it's in no way does it make me any closer to God, nor make me any more conformity to His will. It's just that I'm in obedience to Him because He said it. He told me, these are unclean, and don't eat them. Well, it's not only being in obedience to Him through that, but it's also helping this body, because most of it is not good for the body to start with.
That's right.
I realize that is not part of my walking in the will of God. It's just part of my loving Him and obeying what He has said. And but anyway, these two words I could have never. I recognized that when I was reading reading the definition of these two words, I was recognizing that, and had always had kind of recognized that what man was doing, but I wouldn't have known the word to have associated with the definition, agnostic or ascetic. I would not have known the words to have associated it with. When somebody said, well, these people are thinking that their knowledge is of a great spiritual insight, and they're teaching this knowledge and all of this, and this knowledge is what is going to is the key to their life's mystery, is the key to life's mystery, other than faith. I would have never said, well, they're agnostic. I wouldn't have known the word to give to them. And same thing with the life or habits of that extreme self-denial. The doctrine that by abstinence and self-denial a person can train himself to be in conformity with God's will. You see that in people, but I would have never been able to say, well, that's more asceticism, And I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, but anyway, this poor old GED person that never did even have the purpose of using a GED, because everything I'd done was, at the time, did not require anything, no education. It's just a drawn back and weak mind is what mine was always in. So, and which my back finally gave out. So, anyway, but I wouldn't have, I couldn't have been teaching knowledge because I wouldn't have known those knowledge. But anyway, as we go through this, we're going to see where Paul is combating or fighting against these very things. People that are trying to come in and saying, well, if you're going to be a child of God's, then you got to do this, you got to do that, or they're trying to teach them knowledge of this or that. And Paul is coming against that and telling the people, listen, all you got to know is the truth of the gospel that you've already heard. You've already conformed to that. You've already listened to that. And that's all you need. You don't need all of this other. And today, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we need is our faith in God, in the Messiah, and that will make us conform to His will. Not all this other stuff that's being put out there. And this is what Paul is fighting against, and I want to bring a lot of it out as we teach in this book in the next couple of Sabbaths, because that's what Paul is saying. That's what he's talking. Who Yeshua is and what Yeshua done, and to put our faith in Him, and Him alone. But anyway, I hope to bring that out, and I hope you understand. And I hope maybe what I've said today, some things that maybe I've brought out that will increase your wisdom and knowledge of your faith in God. Not try to teach some great knowledge that you feel like, is spiritually inspired. And so you go out and start teaching that instead of just teaching what Yeshua is to the sinner. Anyway, until next Sabbath, peace be unto you.